Určitě no, až budou dotazy, no.
Dobrý večer. Mé jméno je Radka Pokorná a moc ráda bych vás přivítala na dnešní přednášce Charlesa Eisensteina, kterému tímto předávám slovo. Please, Charles, may I ask you? Yeah? Okay. Protože si myslím, že moje slova jsou tady teďka zbytečná, takže vás vítám za Heart. Thank you, Charles, for coming to Prague in the first time.
Thank you. Well, hello, everybody. Just going to wait till a few people sit down. So everybody just make yourselves comfortable. I'm really happy to be at a hub again. Do most people here know what the hub is or what the hub does or what this, it's a co-working space. And I'm going to talk about gift economy tonight, and more than just gift economy, but also the perceptions of the gift, the way of seeing the world through the lens of gift. And I like doing it at hubs. I've spoken at a few hubs around the world because the hub is itself part of a gift economy. And you may think, no, it's not, because you have to pay in order to share the space here. So it must not be gift, right? Because there's money involved, right? But that's not necessarily what I'm talking about. It has more to do with the spirit and the intention underneath the enterprise. And I noticed on the wall over there, back there somewhere, there's a list of seven principles of social enterprise. Is everybody understanding me okay? Okay. I mean, it's kind of weird to just talk to strangers you've never met before. In human history, that was really rare. Only in the last couple thousand years has this ever happened. So just checking in there. So there's a list of 7 principles, and all of them describe some aspect of what I mean by gift. The first one was that a social enterprise has the business objective of overcoming poverty or solving some social problem in medicine or technology or education, solving some problem. So the enterprise has as its goal something of service, whereas a normal enterprise, and an economist would tell you this, a normal enterprise has the purpose of making money, of course. And maybe there's other purposes as well. But economics says that the main motivation of human behavior, and especially of business behavior, is to maximize profit. But principle number 1 says no. It's to give something to society. The second principle was, yes, that the enterprise be financially and economically sustainable. So gift isn't just about self-sacrifice, but it's also about receiving. In a gift-based society, things flow in circles. Maybe I give to you and you give back to me. Maybe that's the relationship, but maybe not. Maybe I give to you because you're my mother-in-law, and you give to somebody else, and somebody else gives to somebody else, and different kinds of gifts go to different people, and eventually it comes back to me. So the gift goes in circles. People who lived in a gift society saw nature and the cosmos in the same way. They saw nature as a circle of the gift, where where every species had a gift to give that was important for the well-being of all. They had stories about how each species had received its gift. And if the wolf brought down the deer, maybe they would say the deer gave itself to the wolf, knowing that the deer struggled and tried to get away, but there's another logic there. And they understood that every being, including ourselves, has a gift to offer. For a long time, Western science didn't really understand that. And they thought, some species are useless or harmful, and if we get rid of those, we'll be better off. And they thought nature is a gigantic competition of each against all. So if one species goes extinct, then the other ones will be better off. One less competitor. Just like if you're competing with somebody else for a job, and there's a lot more jobs than people, right? And if one of your competitors gets sick, that's good news for you, because we're all separate. That's the perception of our money economy, but it's not the perception of a gift economy. And I'll just add, and I'll come back to this later, that the perception of the money economy, the perception of separation, that we're all separate individuals in a universe of other, that isn't working very well anymore. It's falling apart. For example, science now understands that the well-being of every species is the well-being of all. And if one species goes extinct, the whole ecosystem is a little bit weaker, because just as the ancient people said, every species has a gift. The third principle up there was, yes, the investors only get their money back. They don't get a dividend. They don't get interest on their investment. So if you invest in a social enterprise, maybe you're a philanthropist, maybe you're a wealthy person, you have more money than you need, you're giving it. You're not maybe giving the money because you want it back someday, but you're still making a gift of the use of the money. A normal loan, it's not a gift of the use of money, it's the sale of the use of money. I'll give you €1 million, but you have to give me €2 million back 10 years later, because there's 7% interest on that loan. So I'm not giving you the use of that money, you have to pay for it. But a social enterprise is different. I maybe contribute €1 million, and someday maybe I'll get that back, and I'm giving you the use of this money. I don't need it right now because I'm rich, so I'll let you use it, okay? So that's a gift as well. The next principle was, that any profits get plowed back into the business, into the enterprise, so the owners don't remove the profits and keep them for themselves. So it's not extractive. The purpose is to give something to society, to contribute something and you're not just trying to take. And that's really refreshing, because today, you know, you look around the world, and I don't know if you have this here, but where I come from, there's this layer of cynicism where no matter what beautiful work somebody's doing, there's this little voice inside that says, yeah, but they're really just doing it for the money. You know, where's the money? You know, what's the trick? What's the catch? And social enterprise says, no, we're not going to, it's not about the money. We're just going to keep it sustainable and grow it, but we're not going to extract out of it. The next principle was ecological sustainability. So the gift isn't just about relationships among human beings. It's also about our relationship to the planet. For a long time, our economy has been extractive. We take from nature, but we don't worry about giving back to nature. We take what we call resources. That word already means that it's kind of here for us. You know, it's something that we take. And what do we end up with? We end up with waste. And we don't care, or for a long time we haven't cared, whether that waste is useful to other beings. We don't see that as a gift. But in nature, all waste is a gift. In nature, waste is food. The sixth principle was, about a fair living wage. And I guess that's pretty obvious that the circle of the gift, of course, has to include the people who work there. And that one reason for an enterprise, I mean, it's a group of people who are taking care of each other, as well as taking care of something outside of themselves. So the gift circulates inside the business, too. And the last principle was that it's done with joy. And I think this maybe is the most important one of all. Because, like, I'm going to be talking about living in the gift and gift economy, and there's a implicit message, a hidden message that I want to avoid, which is that you should do this because then you'll be a good person. And you should, in order to be a good person, sacrifice your money interest and overcome your greed and your selfishness. That's not my message at all. Because what people discover as they introduce more generosity or more gift into their lives, they discover that life gets better, richer, more joyful. It's not a sacrifice. It's a deep desire. And that'll be my next topic, this desire to give. But first, I also want to No, I just want to make sure that we're connecting here. And I wonder if there's a little note of cynicism in anyone's mind, which is voiced as, this will never work, this is idealistic, this is unrealistic. The world couldn't really be like that. You know, what about greed? What about human nature? What about this? What about that? Like, and I can and I will meet some of those objections rationally. about human nature, about greed, and so forth. But I want to say that those objections, those arguments, that cynicism, it's not just intellectual. It comes from something that hurts. There's some pain associated with that voice of cynicism. I know it because I feel it too. Because maybe where that's coming from is that we've had that hope aroused before. We felt it before, and it's been betrayed again and again, and we've caught a glimpse of a more beautiful world and how society could be, a golden moment here and there. We've had that experience, and then it gets crushed. And when someone says something about that again, we're afraid it'll be crushed again. So we protect ourselves by being cynical. I do it, and maybe some of you do it as well. So yeah, the joy of the gift. I mentioned already that many ancient cultures, maybe all really ancient cultures, saw the world through the lens of gift. They would say that the sun is giving its warmth and light to the earth. They would say that the planet itself is a gift, and everything on it is a gift. And in a way, that's really true. I don't think anyone believes that we earned the planet, that we earned through our hard efforts the existence of water, that we earned the land that we stand on, that we earned the sun. Or does anyone think that you earned your mother carrying you in her womb and giving birth to you, and earned your parents feeding you? Like, when you turned 18, did they give you a bill for services rendered? And now you have to pay me back? You have to earn that? No, that came as a gift. Like, did you earn your breath? Did you earn your physical health? Did you earn your capacity to create and to work? No. Like, we don't know how to make this stuff happen. It all happens as a gift to us. The world is a gift. Life is a gift. Our breath is a gift. Everyone who loves us is a gift. Water, the sun, it's all a gift. On some level, we all understand that. We have a primal experience of the world being a gift. And the response to that, the natural response, is gratitude. Gratitude is the knowledge that you've received and the desire to give in turn and to see, yeah, my life is a gift, and I want to give of that gift towards something that's meaningful to me, something bigger than myself. And that's the opposite of what economists tell us. They say that the primary motivation of a human being is to maximize rational self-interest, and that for all intents and purposes, this self-interest can be measured by money. And maybe there are some things outside of money, but fewer and fewer things are outside of money. And even those can be studied transactionally. So there's scientists who are studying friendship in terms of transactions, social status, currencies, and things like that. So life is this big competition. That's pretty much what economics tells us. And it says, therefore, that you don't really want to create, you don't really want to work, but you have to. Because if you don't make money. So money is this reward, and it's a threat as well, that overcomes your natural aversion to work, your natural desire to not work. Economics talks about the disutility of work. So work is a negative, but money's a positive, and if the positive is bigger than the negative, then you're going to make your rational choice to go to work on Monday. And if the positive isn't as big as the negative, then you're going to stay at home in front of the computer, in front of the television, eating potato chips and, playing World of Warcraft or something like that, because there's nothing inducing you to create and contribute, right? That's kind of the worldview. And it's based on, ultimately it comes down to something that biology has taught us even, that all organisms are fundamentally motivated by reproductive self-interest. And that biology, and not just economic life, is a competition of competing separate individuals. But I think a little bit of observation or introspection, you look within, and you realize that that's not true. Maybe you've been in a situation where all of your material needs were guaranteed. And if you wanted to, you could sit in front of the television all day. But you're not going to feel happy. You're not going to feel fulfilled. Or if you're in a job, a secure job, and it pays all the bills, no problem, but the job is boring and meaningless, and it's doing something that you don't care about, again, you're going to feel like, I wasn't put here on earth to do this. You're going to feel like you're living the life someone's paying you to live, but not your life. And that's because, as a matter of fact, you're not here to survive and reproduce. You're not here to maximize your security and comfort and financial wealth. You're here to give of your gifts because you're born into gratitude. All the time I see people doing things, working really hard, even courageously, risking their lives or risking the ridicule of other people, the judgment of society, doing things that don't bring them any money. But they're doing them anyway. Protecting forests, working for social justice, and especially doing those small, invisible things that no one ever sees, no one ever celebrates. Maybe taking care of an aging parent or a young child or a handicapped child, and no one recognizes it, and it's invisible. But people are doing it, and it's not because of the money. So all around me, I see a different side of human nature. And that's the side of human nature that we need a lot more of if we're going to have a livable planet. Today, there's a lot of money to be made in, here's a real example. Removing indigenous people from their homelands in Ecuador and Brazil and Colombia, evicting them, cutting down the forests, and drilling and mining for copper, oil, gas, and so forth. You can make a lot of money doing that. You can get really rich. Doing that, or lobbying for laws that allow that to happen, or doing public relations for companies that are doing that, lots of money there. But there's not a lot of money in the opposite. There's not a lot of money in protecting those people, those ecosystems. There's not a lot of money in planting forests, a lot in cutting them down, not a lot in planting new ones. not a lot in protecting wetlands. Why? Why is money not aligned with the things that are beautiful to us? There's an answer to that question. It has to do with the way that money is designed and the way that it works in our system. And I'm not going to talk too much about that because I'm going to talk more about the next step, which is how we could change money. There's two parts. One is how to change money so that it is aligned with what's becoming important to us today. Or you could say what's becoming sacred to us. That's why I call it sacred economics. Like, why should it be that you can get rich destroying the planet, but you can't get rich protecting it? Why? Money is only a social agreement. Money has no power outside of our agreement that it has power. Without our agreements, it's just a bunch of paper. It's just a bunch of bits in computers. It's nothing. Money has its power because of the stories that we tell, the systems of meaning that we tell about money. And those can be changed. And they are changing and have to change because our old stories, our old systems of meaning are falling apart and they're not working anymore. And the institutions, the systems built on those stories are falling apart as well. And we experience that as uncertainty and this feeling that normal isn't coming back and we don't know what's next. But in theory, we could create money or have a money system in which the beautiful things that we and society care about, that's where the money is too. Why not? So that's one part of what I'll talk about. But more than that, I'm going to talk about reclaiming some of life from money altogether. There's changing money, and then there's also shrinking the realm of money. Today, we use money for a lot of things that we never used money for before, one generation ago or several centuries ago. And this is a different society from mine, but across all industrial societies, many of the same things have happened. So I remember when I was a kid, people rarely paid for childcare. After school, if your parents weren't home, no problem, you just go to the neighbor's house. Everybody knew everybody else, so the kids would be running around outside playing games, and it was safe because everybody knew you. But today, neighbors don't really know each other, and so you have to pay for after-school care. So that's something that was part of what I would call a gift economy. And it's become a service. Cooking is something that when I was a kid, you didn't pay for it very often. Maybe very wealthy people had a cook, and occasionally you go to a restaurant and eat there, and you'd be paying people to cook for you there. But usually, mom would buy potatoes and meat and vegetables, and she'd come home and she'd cook it, and no one was paying for that. But today in America, 2/3 of all meals are prepared outside the home. And I've noticed in other countries that I've been, there's a trend away from the skill of cooking. If you go back farther, entertainment was something that was once rarely paid for. People would maybe get together and sing, play music together, If you had a dinner party, then after dinner, someone would play the piano, someone would be singing, and so entertainment was something that was created. And then recorded music came along, film and so forth, and entertainment became something that we consumed and that we purchased. So that was another transition from a gift economy to a money economy. Medicine is another example. In a traditional village, there would be several grandmothers who would know a lot about herbs and folk remedies, and they could handle most conditions. Today, that skill has been, in some cases, made illegal, and in most cases, exported into the hands of experts. And it becomes, again, something that we pay for. And what's happening today is that there's not much left, which means that we have no community. Because you can look around your neighborhood, and every person you see, you can think, I don't need this person. Because whatever you're doing in this society, I could pay somebody else to do that. How can you have community when you look around and you say, I don't need you? We're not creating anything together. I don't depend on your skills. I mean, even if you did work at the supermarket where I buy my food, like if you died, somebody else could do that job. I don't need you personally. So relationships become very superficial. And I'm told it was very different under communism. Because under communism, you could not rely on money to meet your needs. Wealth was more a matter of who you knew. It was a matter of relationships. And you needed those people. They were irreplaceable. You couldn't just pay somebody else to do it. And I'm not saying that, we should go back to communism, but there is this feeling of community that's lost and that we need. You cannot have community without gift. The gifts could be to take care of each other, as in that fifth principle or fourth principle, fifth I think it was, paying the employees a living wage, or the gift could be necessary for what you're creating together. That's beyond yourself. So musicians in a band, even though they're not maybe giving each other food and taking care of each other, their gifts are all necessary because they're all creating something together. So when we talk about gift economy, we're talking about reclaiming some of life away from money and into the realm of the non-monetized. So maybe I'll just give a few examples. I already gave the example of the hub here. But this trend toward the monetization of all life is changing now. So for example, on the internet is to a large extent a gift economy. Most people, when they write a blog, they don't make you pay to read the blog. They just offer it out. Most people don't make you pay to join their Twitter account. All the software I use is open source software. So people are making that software and they're not making me pay. If I want to, I can pay. I can hit the donate tab and I can give a return gift. That's a gift. Even if it's money, I'm still returning a gift. It's not compelled. It's not saying, I'm only going to give you this if you give me that specific thing in return. Otherwise, I won't give it to you. That's not a gift. A gift is, I give it to you and I trust that either you or something else in the universe will take care of me too. That's a gift. On a local level, also, people are rebuilding community with things like, I don't know if you've heard of this concept, but a tool library. You know how like people used to borrow things from neighbors all the time? And in the States, that doesn't happen very much anymore. Everybody would rather buy their own. They would rather have their own table saw, their own electric drill, their own set of tools. Because, you know, here's something about gift. And when you borrow something, you're receiving a gift of the use of that thing. Gifts create bonds. They create obligations. If you give me something, then I kind of owe you one. And maybe if you lend me your table saw and I return it to you, like I'm not necessarily going to give you an equivalent gift. It's not barter. But now you feel free to ask a favor of me because you gave me that gift. We have a connection there. Today, many people do not want to have those obligations. Let me pay you for that table saw. How much rent do you want for that? Okay? And if I pay you for that, then we have no connection. You can't ask me a favor. You don't owe me one. We're done. The transaction is closed. Money transactions are closed. I don't owe you anything. You don't owe me anything. We're done. But a gift is different. It creates a bond. So many people, we have this cultural ideal in the West of independence. And the goal is to be financially independent, which means I don't need anybody. I can pay for everything. I don't owe anybody anything. I'm free. I'm independent. I'm not tied to anybody. I'm a separate individual. And I control the world enough that I don't need anybody. I'm without needs. I'm without dependency. This is, on a global level, this is what our relationship to nature has been. Or we've tried to be independent of nature. And for hundreds of years, the ideology of science and technology has been that we will transcend natural limitations and become the lords and masters of nature. And that in the future, someday, we won't even need nature anymore. We'll engineer the whole planet. We'll have synthetic food. We'll have space colonies. We'll upload our consciousness into computers. We'll have robot parts. And you know those visions of the future from the 50s and 60s, they were these bubble cities where there was nothing alive except for human beings. You know, we had won the war on nature. We had become independent. We are waking up from that delusion now because that ambition isn't working anymore. Yeah, we've conquered nature, but we're learning that we actually depend on nature. And that everything we do to nature, we're doing to ourselves, too. We're not really separate from nature. And on a personal level as well, we find that when we achieve this paradise, this so-called paradise of financial independence, actually it's hell. It's lonely. It's disconnected. We need each other. But still, many people, especially in my country, have this ideology and this desire to be independent. And so we don't want to borrow tools. We don't want to be connected. We'd rather own our own set. We want to have our own table saw. We want to have our own cars. We don't want to have to share with people. We want to have everything of our own inside a big house. So we have no community and no connection. But now there's a trend in the other direction where, for example, maybe the whole neighborhood, 500 houses. Maybe we have a tool library, one big shed that has all the tools. And so we don't need 500 sets of tools for everybody to have their own. All we need is maybe 5 sets, 10 sets. Have we made a sacrifice that way? No, we've become richer because everybody now has access to way more tools than they could in their own basement. And you get to meet each other at the tool shed, and you can learn how to do things, and life becomes richer. But it's bad for the economy. Because now, instead of having to buy 500 table saws, I mean, how often do you use a table saw? You know, like, I mean, I use one maybe 20, 30 minutes a year. Because I like to build things, you know, but how often do I really use it, you know? Not very often. Like, so now instead of buying 500, we only need to buy 5. And what about all the people in the table saw factory? You know, that's going to mean less work for them. The gift economy and the sharing economy are bad for the money economy. They slow or reverse economic growth. Not as much demand, not as many jobs. You'll notice that politicians, left, right, and center, they all celebrate economic growth. And they recognize that as the solution to the current situation, the debt crisis, the unemployment crisis. If only the economy would grow, there'd be more demand. And then we can have more factories and more employment and more services and more work. And this is a need that's constant because of technology, people are becoming more productive. One person can produce more in the same amount of time. This is a problem that's been recognized by economic theorists, especially Marxists, for a long time. This crisis of capital, you know, how are we going to keep everybody employed? And so now I'm just kind of thinking which direction I should go, because I've opened up like 3 or 4 different directions here. And I'm going to actually, I'm not going to speak for 2 hours. I'm going to go for maybe another 15 minutes, and then we can do questions and stuff, and we can see where your curiosity's at. But what I want to say about economic growth is that our financial system only works in the presence of economic growth. When economic growth slows, for example, when it meets the limits of the ecology and we can't convert more of nature into product, when it meets the limits of society and we can't convert more of community into services, then there's a crisis. Because, and I won't go, I'll tell you a little bit about the reason. As I see it, the reason is because of the way money is created as interest-bearing debt. You may or may not know that all money is lent into existence, either at the central bank level or at the commercial level. A bank, for example, gives you a loan of that €1,000,000, but you have to pay back €2,000,000. Where do you get that extra million? Well, you're an intelligent, hardworking person. You can earn it from everybody else. But the problem is that all money is created like this. So imagine if I lent everybody in the room €1,000,000 and everybody owes me $2 million. Half of you have to go bankrupt. And if you go bankrupt, bad things happen. So you're put into competition with each other, aren't you? And is that human nature is bad and that you're greedy and competitive? Or is it that the conditions force you to be greedy and competitive? A certain aspect of human nature is brought out by the system. Half of you have to go bankrupt unless by the time your €2,000,000 is due, I've lent even more money into existence. So you can, all or most of you can pay me back. But that $2 million, that comes with interest as well. So there's always more debt than there is money. And when that debt comes due, no problem, I will have lent even more money into existence. So the amount of money has to grow and grow and grow. And the goods and services associated with that money are pressured to grow as well. I'm only going to lend to you if you have a business plan, or if you're working for somebody who's a business plan. If you're going to say, yeah, I'm going to find some part of nature and I'm going to convert it into products. I'm going to find some relationship and I'm going to convert it into services and I'm going to make money. And I say, yeah, here's your loan. I know you'll be able to pay me back. So there's pressure. That's why the money today is in those things that are going to create new goods and services. And gift economy reverses that. It hastens the economic crisis. But it also makes it less severe because now you have other ways to meet your needs. So you can see that gift economy, it's not just like some nice little add-on to our lives. It's part of a big shift. It's part of a shift into an economy that doesn't need to grow and grow and grow for us to enjoy good lives. Today, the policymakers, they're stuck because they're in this financial system that only works if you can keep lending more and more and more money into existence. If you can't, then the debts become unpayable very quickly. And you have a concentration of wealth. And you have unemployment. And the system freezes up. And it falls apart. And you can keep it going for a little while by continuing to lend money that you know will never get paid back. But at some point, it becomes mathematically impossible to sustain it. And we're reaching that point right now. But it generates pressure to find something else to convert into money, to keep the economy growing somehow. Now, probably everybody in this room can think of another solution. Instead of consuming more and more and more in order to keep the economy running, what would happen if we all worked less and consumed the same? If we're getting more and more productive, we could work less instead of consuming more, couldn't we? But instead, for hundreds of years, as a society, we've always chosen to consume more rather than to work less. In 1800, futurists were saying a machine can do the work of 1,000 men. So very soon, each man will have to work only 1,000th as hard. Instead, what happened is each man consumed 1,000 times more and worked just as hard. It's time for that to end. So I'm just kind of putting like this urge toward gift economy, toward rebuilding community, toward collaborative consumption, toward sharing. I'm putting this in a larger context. It's part of the shift toward an ecological age. And that mindset, it's part of a mindset too. It's part of a consciousness where we see our relationship to nature in terms of gift as well. No longer taking resources and dumping waste, but understanding that everything we put back into nature has to be usable by nature and that we need to join the circle of life. And therefore, we need to change the economic system to reflect that value. For example, by making pollution very expensive, green taxes and things like that. And I'm not going to go into that right now because I want to stay a bit more focused on gift. And to say that this is really what it comes down to is a different understanding of who you are and how the world works. It's a different answer to the question, who am I? Every culture has an answer to that question. And ours has been, who you are is a separate self in a world of other, competing with other separate selves. And the universe out there doesn't have the qualities of self. It's just a bunch of stuff out there. It doesn't have intelligence, doesn't have purpose, doesn't have consciousness. It's just a bunch of stuff. And therefore, the sun isn't really giving anything to us. The planet isn't giving anything to us. It's just chemistry out there, you know? It's just some nuclear physics happening. It's just some protons, neutrons, and electrons randomly bouncing around out there. But it's not giving, you know, that's a projection. That's an anthropomorphic projection. We're projecting human qualities onto this dead stuff out there. That's the story that we've lived in. That story's falling apart. I could talk about how it's falling apart scientifically even. But science has told us that. Biology, right, we're programmed by selfish genes to maximize reproductive self-interest. Psychology, we're this mind encased in flesh. Religion, you're a soul encased in flesh, separate from the world, separate from other souls. They all agreed. And that story is coming to an end. And we're understanding that who we are, the new answer, which is also very ancient, the new answer to who you are is you are a connected being. You are the totality of all your relationships. Not separate from each other, not separate from nature. To somebody in a gift economy, that's obvious. In a gift economy, it's obvious that more for you is more for me too. Because in a gift economy, you don't accumulate things. If you have more than you need, you give. Not only because you have a generous spirit and desire to give, also because that's what wealth is. Because the more you give and the more generous you are, the more people will want to take care of you too. In a lot of cultures, if you wanted to have high status, if you wanted to be a chief, you had to give a lot of stuff. Even in medieval Europe, if you wanted to be a lord or a king, you know, you always read about they're having a feast, you know, they're giving gifts to their knights. Like, those gifts created obligations. So anyway, in a gift economy, your good fortune is my good fortune because you'll have more to give. And your bad fortune, you get sick, then you won't be able to give anymore. And I'll be worse off too. It's not like I'll have one less competitor. That's not how it was. So in a gift economy, this, like today, it sounds like a spiritual truth that as I do unto you, so I do unto myself. Right? It seems like this, that it contradicts economic life. But it didn't used to. For us, it's a struggle to live according to our understanding of connectedness. Because our systems and our ideology are telling us, no, you're separate. Better look out for yourself. You won't be okay if you live according to this desire to give. But when you actually do it, and I'm not saying that I do it more than, you know, lots of other people, but I find that when I take a new step into living in the gift and trusting that, yeah, what I'm here to do is to give, and living from that, I find that the ideology's wrong that says, I better look out for myself. I find that the more that I give and the more that I trust, the more comes back to me as well. There's a different logic that's operating in this world. So when we build gift economy, we're taking a step into that logic. It's a shift of consciousness that you can feel. Just as you can feel the truth of our interconnectedness. You can feel it because why else does it hurt when you read about a species going extinct? Or when you see those photographs of strip mines in Colombia, this huge forest gone, where you see pictures of a lake that's been dried out, you know, and all that death. Why does that hurt? Is it because you're afraid that it will hurt your future economic interests? Or does it just hurt because actually it's happening to you? Anyway, I'm going to say I can't convince you logically that separation is just a myth and that our true nature is that of interbeing. You can build a rational case for either one. But I'll just point out that these two stories, they're both stories. They're not just intellectual. They are part of a feeling state, a state of being. We'd like to think that we make our choices based on reason and evidence. Everybody likes to think that, but we don't, actually. We make our choices based on who we are, our choices of what to believe. We choose what is resonant with who we are and who we're becoming. And then we dress that up in logic and evidence. There's a study in the University of Michigan where they studied what people do when presented with contradictory evidence, evidence that contradicts their beliefs. Do they change their minds? No. They believe their beliefs even more when presented with contradictory evidence. They harden their beliefs. You may have experienced this when you argue with one of your relatives, and they just, it doesn't matter what evidence you present. They're closed-minded, and they're walking away thinking you're closed-minded too. And both sides of any debate think that the other side is stupid, ignorant, immoral, bad, and that's why they don't get it. They're just ignoring the evidence. They're unreasonable. Both sides think that. Anyway, I mentioned that just to invite you to explore the story of interbeing, interconnectedness, and the perceptions of the gift that go along with it, the spirit of the gift, the understanding that you're here to give and that no other life will do. And I'm not saying quit your job and give away all your money or something like that. That's part of this kind of heroic struggle against ourselves, that anything good has to come with big struggle. That's a mirror of humanity's struggle against nature. Conquest of nature, conquest of self, conquest of the wild, conquest of the inner wild. That's part of the old story. I would say that when you recognize this discontent with living a life you're paid to live, and or limiting yourself according to, can I afford that? Will I be okay? When you take a step away from that and into the gift, it's a natural next step. You look at that and you feel, yeah, I'm ready. And then an opportunity presents itself that's maybe at the edge of your courage, but not past the edge. But it's a growth. It's a growth opportunity. And you feel ready for it. And it might have nothing to do with your job. It might be something very personal. Who knows what it is? And it comes from tapping into that feeling, that knowledge that I am here to give, and that primal gratitude that comes from understanding that life and the world are gifts. Okay, I think I'm going to thank you for your attention and open it to questions.
I don't have a question. Only asked this.
Hello, my name is Flip, and thank you for your great talk. I'd like to ask you one simple question. A few weeks ago, I was browsing about CIA fact book, and
Sorry, about what?
CIA fact book.
CIA fact book, yeah.
Fact book, yeah.
Yeah.
And there's written that the total Earth debt is much higher than what we earn. So how does this spell work about not making enough money to pay the debt is going to end, or is there something we can do, or does it mean that the whole Earth is going to bankrupt? Thank you.
Yeah. Everybody knows that debts that cannot be paid won't be paid. But the pressure to pay them or to keep servicing the debts, to keep paying the payments, will continue until every bit of wealth has been given away to the creditors and there's nothing left. It's called austerity. It says, oh, you can't make your debt payments? Czech Republic or Portugal or whatever country? Well, you know, you could spend less on teachers, less on education, you could cut pensions, you could raise taxes, you could devote more of your country's wealth to us, to the creditors. And more and more and more. It's like if you owe me money and you say, Charles, I can't pay anymore. I'm like, well, what was your name again? Philip. Yeah, I'd say, Philip, you know, you could eat a little less. You know, you could stop going on vacation. You could work harder. You know, anything to keep paying. On the national level, these austerity measures are implemented in return for new loans that allow the country to continue paying its bondholders. Now, these new loans come with interest as well. So basically, unless the economy grows faster than the interest rate on those new loans, then the problem is going to come back even worse. In a few years, then they'll have to devote even more, cut even more pensions. They'll sell off national assets. Greece can sell off some islands, sell off the Parthenon to Disney, I don't know. The final plunder, the final robbery is that the youth of the nation are stolen. There's no jobs there anymore, and they all emigrate. That's the final robbery. So if you want to avoid that, sooner or later, you're just going to have to stop paying. And some countries are starting to experiment with that. Iceland, for example, Ecuador has played with that, or Bolivia. Argentina did it 10 years ago. And I think that what could really change the system would be a debt strike, which will have to happen sooner or later. So, yeah, thank you.
Hello, Milena. I have a question because I've seen already 4 years ago a very interesting documentation done by Switzerland, and they say a solution would be give unconditioned wages to everybody, and if somebody earns more, he is invited, but I think for me, this idea is very well done, because then everybody would have more time also for those work which are in the moment not paid. And for example, my personal experience, last year I was helping a friend caring for a 90-year-old lady. And for me, during this period, I learned such lot more than in 40 years in business management.
Thank you. Thank you. So you've given me an opportunity to talk about my favorite topic. There's a chapter in my book about it, but you're talking about universal basic income. Economists are appalled by the idea. You guys know what the word appalled means? Appalled is like, you've got to be kidding me, right? They're appalled by the idea of a universal basic income, which means everybody, every citizen, every human being gets enough money every year to live. And the economist says, but then nobody would have an incentive to work. And what they're saying basically is, you don't want to work. I know you. You're a lazy ass. You just want to play, you know, what's that horrible game called? Call of Duty. You just want to sit around. But really, like, I think that universal basic income is a really important primal kind of gift that says, yeah, we trust ourselves. As a society, we trust ourselves. We trust each human being to want to contribute and to know for yourself what the best contribution is. Some things will never be quantified. For something to enter the world of goods and services, it has to be quantifiable. And what gets left out? What gets left out is a lot of the stuff that was traditionally called women's work, the stuff that most societies, ancient societies, valued above everything, but that our society doesn't value. For example, nurturing and caring, like taking care of children. Like, what could be more sacred than taking care of children? What could be more important? You don't get paid for that. In the United States, you get like a month, 2 months of child leave. And only a few people even get that. Even in Europe, like maybe Germany gives you 2 years, or Sweden or something like that, but like, you know, you should be able to, society should support that sacred work, or taking care of a 90-year-old woman. The like, she could go to an old folks' home where there's professional care, and it could be a service, but something's left out. Yeah. Right. Well, or, I mean, you could, like, you know, hire, you know, cheap labor from Turkey or Iraq, you know, and they can feed the, but something's lost. Like, this thing you can't measure is lost. Maybe she's eating the same quantity of soup, 300 milliliters of soup, the same quantity, but the qualitative thing is lost. The love is lost. The care is lost. The attention is lost. That's the kind of thing that we need to support.
Yeah, and I should not forget to tell, because the initiation came from my son, because this old lady have been like a kind of grandmother for him. And when I have been working, this old lady always had time for him. And so he told me, that's now your duty to do something her, and I fully agree.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think this is really important. I can make good economic arguments for universal basic income. It's a kind of fiscal stimulus. For those of you who are interested in economics, like there's good Keynesian reasons for it, but I think that there are much more important reasons because it supports people in doing those things that cannot be quantified, that they're doing just from love. And it's a statement of trust. It would change the economy in very huge ways. If there were a universal basic income, it would be hard to get people to spend their whole lives cleaning toilets or sweeping the street or working on an assembly line. So society would have to change to have less of that kind of work. People would have to clean their own toilets, maybe. Maybe the hotel industry would be very different than we know it. Maybe it would be more of, Airbnb kind of stuff, finding people online, maybe industrial engineers would have a new design criterion. Now they have to design not just to minimize cost, but to minimize tedious labor. They would have to design to make work interesting. A lot of things would change, and there would always be some work that, dishwashing, driving trucks or whatever, there might always be some work that's boring. But I think it's good for everybody to do a little bit of hands-on work. And washing dishes is okay if you're doing it as a summer job when you're 18 for a few months, or a year maybe. But not if you're doing it 40 hours a week for the rest of your life. I don't want to live in a world that's built on people spending their whole lives doing things that are far beneath human dignity. Every time I'm at an airport, there's like that old guy or that immigrant, picking up garbage, emptying the trash cans the whole time, or driving the shuttle back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Do we really need to have that in our world so that we can have a good life? Does life have to be built on the degradation and suffering of others? Is that just the way the world is? It doesn't have to be that way. We can envision a different system.
I have a question of what would you propose, except for us who are perhaps explicitly interested in this kind of shift, how to diminish the suffering of those that are not yet aware of anything like this and that would suffer the most when the system starts collapsing, which already happens in most of our neighborhoods and countries, and everywhere we hear it in the news every day. And we see that so many people that are not prepared at all for this shift suffer the most because they didn't develop at all these relationships that would help them to work in a new way. For the minority that is aware of the future and of the fact that it is somehow not sustainable anymore, okay, they start to prepare. Or some lucky people in countries where this still was not eradicated or destroyed, well, they are the best prepared for this. But then we have the whole Western society almost that accumulated the karma for really bad times. So this is a major issue, I feel.
Yeah. So I think that most people don't change until life just stops working. I think that some kind of crisis is unavoidable. The old story has to fall apart before the new story can really be born. some of us have had that crisis already happen. And we're already exploring new models of economy, new models of relationship, new processes of decision-making, collaborative democracy. Like we're practicing nonviolent communication, like all of these different things. We're creating a new template. But the majority of people aren't going to be ready for it until the world stops working for them. I think by kind of pioneering these new structures, we're performing an important service so that when the world falls apart for everybody else, there's something to offer them. Say, hey, here's what we're doing, this works. Here's permaculture. Here's restorative justice. Here's gift economy. Here's something that works. People also, we intuitively know how to live. Every time that there's a disaster, like in America, for example, like there's nowhere on earth that's forgotten gift economy more than America. There's nowhere on earth where people are more separate and more addicted to control and domination than America. But guess what? Whenever there's a natural disaster, like where I live, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, there were big floods 2 years ago. So the water, the Susquehanna River rose by 10 or 15 meters. And everybody's, thousands of people are flooded out of their houses. The cash machines don't work. Money is useless. You can't pay somebody to come in and move the stuff out of your house and evacuate it for you. But the electricity's out, no electricity. So what happens? People come out of their houses and they begin to take care of each other. And they said that in those 4 days, they experienced more community and stronger connections than they had in 40 years before that. When things fall apart, when the system that keeps us separate stops working, then our natural impulse to connect and to step into the gift and to be generous comes out. And there's a good book about it by Rebecca Solnit called A Paradise Built in Hell. And she examines many, many cases of natural disasters. And the authorities are worried about rioting, and looting, and they think that without law and order, it's going to turn into a war of everybody against everybody else. We need law and order, but that's not what happens. Law and order are gone, but instead of fighting everybody and competing, people cooperate, they take care of each other. Anybody who has something to give will offer it. Somebody like in the San Francisco earthquake of I can't remember, 1906 or something like that, the woman who had a stove that was still working, she brought it out into the street, and soon there was a tent there, and people who had food brought food, and they were cooking for everybody, and everybody comes together. That's human nature unleashed. And then the authorities get nervous. Like, whoa, people are doing fine without us. So then they come in and they, establish a curfew, and they actually prevent this expression of human generosity from happening. But we can see what happens when things fall apart. And we need to offer something like we saw in Turkey or in Egypt, 2 years ago in Egypt. The people took over. When the police joined the protesters, there was that golden moment, it lasted maybe 12 days, where the people could have done anything. Nothing could stop them, but they didn't know what to do. All they knew was to install a new president inside basically the same structures as the old president was in. And the structure very much determines the behavior. So not much changed. And when these moments of people power erupt, and they will, they have to, we need to be ready with alternatives that we've actually tried out and we actually believe in them and we know that they work. So, sorry for the very long answer, but.
My name is Honza Burian, and I have a very practical question. How would you deal with black passengers, those people who just take and don't give anything back into the network? And I think especially in big social networks, because in the small one they could be easily identified, but in the big networks I'm afraid that they could easily spoil the whole thing.
Right. Yeah. Those are called free riders also in social theory, right? And so, yeah, every gift society has ways to deal with those people. If you are just taking and you're not giving anything in return, pretty soon people are going to stop giving to you too. A certain amount of free riding is okay. But if somebody's really abusing the generosity and trust of society, you have to have some way to stop that. So one way is to not pay them. I mean, that's what money is supposed to do. You know, you're supposed to only get money if you are contributing something. So let me be clear. I'm not talking about a world without money. Even if I'm talking about a basic income, what I'm really saying is, I can't tell if you're going to be a free rider or if you're going to be like this woman who's going to take the opportunity to care for somebody. And I know that trusting you could mean that you're just going to, you know, play Call of Duty all day and eat potato chips, right? That could happen. But you're not going to get any more than just bare survival by doing that. And you're not going to be, now there's people who are building systems, kind of alternatives to money, where instead of getting paid for your contributions, you get some other kind of recognition. But your point is well taken. You have to have some means of social witnessing of people's generosity or lack thereof, so that people know who's generous and who isn't. When you see someone being generous, you want to be generous to them too. One way that this becomes known is people tell stories about the actions of other people. But yeah. Yeah, so yeah, definitely every society needs to address the problem of free riders. Yeah. But it's just like the basic income says, yeah, you know, we're not going to starve you to death if you contribute nothing. You know, like you get that. And also you look at, why is somebody a free rider? Why does somebody only want to take and not give in turn? What's really behind that? What's happened to them that's shut down this desire to give? I think that in a healed society, this is the kind of wound that will be healed as well. You know, in a gift culture, in an ancient culture, if somebody was acting very selfishly, they might be seen as ill. And maybe there would be a circle gathered around them. And they'd be like, brother, you know, what happened to you that you're not expressing your gifts? You know? Like, we're concerned for you. So it's not like we're going to pressure you and make you give. It's coming from a different place. It's coming from the place of, I know what you really want is to contribute. And you're not doing that. And how, you know, why? What's blocking you? How can we facilitate that? So it does come down to a different kind of trust in human nature. But I'm not saying, like, you know, we can always heal that person in every situation. I mean, I guess I'm looking into myself and I'm thinking, when do I personally free ride, take advantage of people, and not contribute? One time is when I feel insecure, and I feel like I have to get enough before I can give anything. Another time is when I feel that my gifts are not worth anything, you know? A lot of the behavior that we see as the problem is actually a symptom. Greed is a symptom of scarcity, of the perception of scarcity. Judgmentality is a symptom of self-rejection. I guess I could make a whole list. The most basic kind of separation is to say, you are fundamentally different from me. If I were you, I would be doing different. Like, I wouldn't be fracking if I were the CEO. I wouldn't be, ripping off old ladies in an insurance scam. I wouldn't do that because I'm better than you. If I were the president, I wouldn't be doing this. I'm different from you. What we're coming into is the understanding that, no, if I were in the totality of your situation, I would do as you do, because we're fundamentally one. And to step into that is scary. Like, I can't do it all the time. I've got a friend in Oakland, Pancho Ramos Steele, his name is. He's a peace activist. And he lives in the worst neighborhood, gang territory. When he moved in, you hear gunshots every day, every night. Guns, gangs. Every house on the street has bars on their windows. He moves in, and he leaves his door unlocked and wide open all day. And he's just got this charisma. People would come in to rob him and end up being peace activists and joining his permaculture. They have a permaculture farm that they've torn down the fences, So one day he's outside, and a gang comes to rob him. They're robbing him at gunpoint. They're robbing him, and then a police car pulls up, lights flashing, sirens wailing. The police have come to rescue him. And the gang runs. And he runs with them, away from the police. And they get away, and they're like, we were robbing you. Don't you get that? We were robbing you. Why are you running with us? And he says, no, I'm one of you. We're all brothers. I'm one of you. I'm your people. And they're like, okay, whatever, And but he doesn't go away. He's like, 10, 15 minutes, I don't know how long, and he's still walking with them now, And then they're like, what do we have to do to get rid of you? What do we have to do to make you go away? And he says, you have to shake my hand. And they all shake his hand. And from then on, what he said was true. They became his people. Because he refused to see them through the eyes of separation. He looked at them and said, I know you. Like, it wasn't a trick when he said, you're my people. I know you. You're somebody who wants to make friends. You're somebody who wants to connect. I know you. What would the world be like if we looked at the politician and the CEO and said, I know who you really are. You want to contribute to a more beautiful world too. But instead we say, I know you, you're an evil bastard, and the only thing you listen to is money and force and pressure. So we're going to make you do the things you don't really want to do. We're going to scare you into it. And the general public, I know you just want to live your greedy lifestyle. You want to consume and get rich and richer and richer. I know you, but I'm going to make you ashamed of that. I'm going to scare you into not doing that. Because if you do that, there'll be no earth for your children or your grandchildren. It's really scary. You know, it's a threat, you know, and think of the economic damage of climate change, you know, trillions of dollars it'll be to your disadvantage, right? I know you are a maximizer of rational self-interest. That's who you are. That's what we're operating from. But if you look inside yourself, how many people here became an environmentalist because of all the money you'll save? Of all the money you'll save. How many people became an environmentalist? Do you care about the earth because it'll be to your financial advantage? Is that why you care about the earth? Of course not. And I don't think that anybody really is an environmentalist because they're scared for the future. What makes somebody into an environmentalist is grief and love. And if we want to make other people into environmentalists, we have to show them what's being lost and how beautiful it is and how beautiful it can be. That's what I think. Also, after this question, I want to make sure that the women have an equal opportunity. Most of the questions have been from men also. Just want to keep that in mind. Yeah.
Okay. Hi, my name is Pavel Novak. And I have a question. Why do you think that people damage themselves? That, for example, they want to mostly be economically rich, but they are, as a human being, very poor. So what should happen? And just for example, I don't know if you know, but you're here in the country, one of the post-communist country, where basically you should say that we had a gift economy. It depends how you see, how you look at the situation, how you see it. But mostly we had this here. But what was happening is that we basically changed that, and all the bad things came here. It came here from the theoretically from the capitalism.
Yeah.
And what happened is a mix of the, say, socialism or communism for the changes of the capitalism makes completely upside down the situation in this country, for example.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this transition from gift economy to money economy, capitalist economy, neoliberal economy, you know, a lot of it happens by force, really. If a country doesn't go along with it, then the United States and other powers, they fund opposition that'll be more friendly to corporate interests, that'll open markets. If that doesn't work, there might be a coup or a bombing, you know, they might bomb the country, invade the country. So there's a lot of pressure to, quote, open up your market or to institute free trade. Like, I'm not an expert on this, but I read some of this material, you know. Like, I know what's going on. It's pretty ugly. And a lot of it is very subtle, too. Like, so if it's about free speech or freedom of information or free press, what that really means is that a country gets flooded with glamorous images of the West and sophisticated marketing at the same time that their traditional systems of value and meaning are being destroyed. Even like education can be part of this, where you take children away from their traditional matrix of relationships and you put them in school and you subject them to a curriculum that has nothing to do with their connection to the land. And so they become disconnected and no longer immersed in their cultural stories and no longer knowing who they are. So they become susceptible to marketing, which says, oh, You don't know who you are? I'll tell you. You're the guy who wears the Nikes, you know? You're the guy who has the brands, you know? You're the guy, right? So it's a very complicated process. But I think just in general, people accumulate the things that they don't need to compensate for the loss of what they really need. And what they really need is unavailable or hard to get. What we really need is intimate connection to each other and to nature. And when we don't have that, then we expand the realm of what we, of, you know, stuff. Like for example, well, I spoke about it before. What's normal for a human being is to look around, and most of the time, most of the faces you see are people you know really well. You know their whole story. You know their life story. You know who their parents and who their grandparents were, or their children and their grandchildren. And they know you that well, too. Therefore, you never need to pretend. It's pointless because you're known so well. And you know who you are because you're known so well. So there's not this identity crisis. And the same is true with the land. You know, every hill has a name and a story, and every bird and every animal and every plant, and you know what it's used for. You know what medicine it is. You know the mythological stories. You know the the story of, you know, who likes to eat that plant and what animals like to eat that plant. Like, you're immersed in a web of stories. You know who you are through relationship. Take that away, and it's taken away in a million different ways. You take that away, and you're left this lonely, hurting, cut off, alienated individual who wants to recover that lost being and is insatiably hungry, therefore, has a hunger that can never be satisfied. No matter how much money they have, no matter how many possessions. In America, if you don't have money, then it's no matter how much food you eat. So half the nation's obese. Is that because they're just greedy and indulgent? No. It's because they're hungry for something. But all they've got is food. Yeah, it's tragic. But we're here to do something about it.
So I think there is no the crisis of economics crisis, there is crisis of values. And there is an issue when people start to speak about the values. So, and it's up to us, each of us, to choose the values. So, I don't know, it will take basically forever, and after you are go the circle.
It's all linked together, yeah. It's not only an economic problem, but there's an economic dimension to it. But all of our institutions are reaching a crisis, just like the economic system. All these crises are happening together. And I see it like a birth crisis. You know, they're pushing us into a new world.
So basically, why do you think that people damage themselves?
Because they do not know what they really want.
Sorry, I'm being facetious, but
Well, because we're cut off from it. You know, we're told from day one that here's what's important. You know, we're told that things that are not important are really important, and we're also cut off from trusting our desires by this war against the self that says that goodness comes from overcoming desire, overcoming pleasure, being spiritual, being rational, being in this non-material world. I think what we call spirituality, or the concept of spirituality, is part of the problem. Because it says that the sacred is not in matter. The sacred is not in your desires. The sacred is not in your body. The sacred is not in relationships. It's outside that. It's in some non-material world. And we need to bring spirit back into matter and sacredness back into matter. Now I even lost track of your question. Yeah, we don't know. Our culture doesn't give us room to know, and it doesn't give us room to find it again.
Okay, I'm going to tie in with that a little bit and
Yeah.
ask, maybe it's a difficult question. What is your conception of sacred?
My conception of the sacred. Well, okay. I will kind of give you a definition, but I want to say that any definition I give will be less than what it actually is to me. But I would say that something is sacred to me when I can see its uniqueness and its relatedness. So if I see you as just a check and not as a unique individual, then the sacredness is lost. If I see a tree just as a tree, a member of a category, and not as a unique individual, the sacredness is lost. When something is made into a commodity and cut off from its source, cut off from its relationships, and made into something standard, then it becomes no longer sacred, at least in my experience of it. Now, maybe the Dalai Lama would still see it as sacred. For me, I can say that it's still sacred, but that's just an ideology. I experience it as just a thing. We've treated nature as not sacred, you know. When you see a landscape and you reduce its infinite uniqueness to a set of finite categories, a certain amount of lumber, a certain amount of iron ore, even a certain amount of ecosystem services, a certain amount of carbon sink, right? Anytime you reduce it like that, it becomes no longer sacred. You're not seeing it as a sacred thing in and of itself. I want to make sure that, to respect the time here, what is the official time? Radka, where are you? Or somebody in charge?
5 minutes to 8, but if you want someone, the last question, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sorry.
Hello, Hello. You've mentioned the, say, intergeneration conflict of, you've been talking about your relatives or the relatives of ours or whatever relatives that might not understand what we were talking about, what we were feeling. And I'm sure most of the people in this room know this feeling. I think in our country it's very explicit because of the society change, the social change. And I'm dealing with this issue in my every visit of my parents. And I'm sure I'm not alone. And I would just like to ask you what, if you're having the same experience, what is your suggestion or what is your decision? I mean, what's your position to this? Because I'm dealing with, on one hand, I'm either struggling and want to solve this and want to be in harmony and bring the understanding about, or on the other hand, I'm in a complete, say, ignorance about the relationship, and neither one of those feels good. And
yeah.
I wouldn't be asking this question if I thought it's my personal thing, you know?
Right.
I just wanted to make that.
Yeah, a lot of us experience this. Stories have their own kind of lifespan. So somebody might be occupying a story. You guys know what I mean by a story? Like what you tell yourself about what's important, what's valuable, how the world works, your system of meaning. That's a story. So a lot of people are not done with their story yet. And you have to respect that and trust that when they live it to completion, when they grow inside of that story enough, it's going to stop working. And then they will be open to an offering of something new. If they haven't gotten to that point yet, then if you attack the story, if you say the way you're living is wrong, you're wrong about the world, they're just going to retreat into it even more. It won't work. So you have to look for people for whom the story is falling apart. Like the things that they thought were true, the things they thought were real, the things they thought were important, maybe they don't really believe it anymore, and you can feel that. That's the moment to say, hey, guess what? What society says is important isn't really important. You know, football or Beyonce's underwear, you know, like it's not important. Like they might be ready for that. If they're not, then don't force it. Part of the old story is that change in the world happens through force. You overcome the opposite force. You overcome the enemy. You win the war. You kill the bad guy. Every action movie has the same plot. The problem's caused by a bad guy, and the solution is the total destruction and humiliation of the bad guy. That's not actually how change usually happens. My government thinks that that's how change happens, but it's not even working for them anymore very well. They have all the force in the world, and things are still out of control. Anyway, so what do you do with you know, your parents or with people who feel like they're very, very firmly in the old story? What you can do is you can offer them data points that don't fit. You're not attacking the story, but you're kind of disrupting it. So if somebody is very, very attached to, yeah, this world is a competition, a struggle, everybody's in it for themselves. If you're very generous to that person, then that doesn't fit into their story. It weakens their story. A few years ago in America, before Christmas, okay, there's this store called Kmart where the poor people shop. Stuff's very cheap there, but even so, the people who go there, they're so poor that they can't buy it right away. They have to, it's called layaway. You go and pay $10, $20 a month, and then by Christmas you can get the item. So this man went to Kmart, and he secretly, anonymously paid people's layaway items. So the person would come and to make their $10 or $20 payment, you know, and wanting to get this for their kids for Christmas. And the personnel, the Kmart person says, oh, your account has been paid in full. It's yours. That has a powerful effect. You can feel the effect of that. It's not because that person saved $20. You know, it's not because that person's kid got some piece of plastic junk for Christmas. It's because something happened that was impossible in that person's world. The world isn't supposed to work like that, but it happened. Anytime you can provide an experience that violates the laws of reality for somebody, you are weakening that reality. And sometimes it might be something aggressive. You know, it might be to like call somebody on their bullshit. It might be to stand up to the bully. Sometimes it is. More often, it's an act of forgiveness or generosity.
would like to thank you, Charles. It's so easy to the gift economy is so easy, and I think we just have to start to make some transformation and just bringing the gift economy to the reality. I think gift economy is something what is about the relationship, about much deeper values, and thank you for today's lecture.
Yeah, you know, I'd just say as a really quick goodbye, if you just walk out of here with that knowledge, yeah, I am here as the bringer of a gift. I am here to give. If you just carry that with you, then little magic will happen. Something will happen. Just try. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for coming to Prague. And I would like to invite all of you to come to panel discussion at Forum 2000 on Monday. On Monday. So you can meet Charles and Libor Malý and Tomáš Kostelecký, the sociologist from Czech Republic. So I think the discussion will follow next new topics. And thank you all of us for coming, for great catering, and enjoy this evening.